There has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 245. I think we're going to call it Decide Your Best, Part 1. Welcome back, my veggie bestie. Welcome back. It's Michelle, your vegan coach / cheerleader / nudge. And this is the first of a 2-part series I'm calling, I think I'm calling it Decide Your Best, because as always, this podcast is as much for me and reinforcing the best coaching tools I know as for you, my dear Veg Your Bestie. And this season, it seems like here at Veg Your Best Central, we've been making loads of decisions, little ones, big ones, multiple stage ones. I can't decide. Is it more decisions than usual? I don't know. It feels so, but maybe that's because there've been a lot of family plans and the family's been growing, and it seems like there are more spin-offs for each plan. And I tend to notice which decisions get stuck in that spin cycle, as I call it, and which ones seem to get sorted with a minimum amount of drama. So we're going to talk a little bit about decisions, deciding. And a 2-part series is because when it comes to new plans and goals and ideas, that is for sure part of what goes on in a plant-based or in a vegan practice. And we often have a list or a plan or a kit or some sort of a agenda. We know what we want to do, but we don't always do it. And just so you know, that's not just you. It isn't. And knowing that we want to do things and that we're not doing them, that can really start this spin cycle, this cycle that's like, I know, but I'm not doing it. Okay, this time we'll get it definitely handled. I know exactly what and why. I basically even know how, but it's not happening. I'm not happening. I'm not making it happen. And then it's all too much. And that's a recipe for things like denial and just starting to ignore what it is you actually want to do. And then, for whatever reason, it will rear up again. But now it brings up all the recriminations of past failures. We all have some of these areas in our lives where we get stuck in the spin cycle, and that gap between knowing what to do and doing it. The gap between knowing and doing. It's why in our society, we have things like teachers and organized programs and books and 12-step programs and yes, coaching, because that is the part of the process of getting better at something new, becoming more accomplished, taking on some new undertaking. It's sticking with things through a very, very normal, but often very messy middle. So a lot of us are learning more about health and the environment and the ethical impact of our choices, our food choices, our purchases, our lifestyle behaviors. But when the time comes to put in an order at a restaurant or plan your week or cook or eat with family, somehow we fall back into old patterns. I'm traveling again with my family this week. All of us are going to Spain for a family celebration. And a little part of me, even after all this time and all this experience of traveling while vegan, a little part of me still wishes I didn't have to prepare quite so much to make vegan choices. In Spain, for example, I know intellectually I can easily do that myself, but I also want to keep it from being a huge distraction from the christening we're going to and all the things that we're going there for and all the people I want to be with. And if I thought of that slight discomfort as an indication that something was wrong with me or with my commitment or with this practice or with my suitability for being vegan or with my age, if I used that niggling discomfort as evidence that something was really wrong, it could really make me wobbly. What challenges sometimes pop up for you and start to make you feel wobbly in your determination or in your resolve, that make you start to feel, maybe I'm no good at this. Maybe I've failed. Maybe it's too hard or too late to take this on, or maybe I'm too old or physically not suited or not capable, or that, well, I could, but not with these people in my family or at my office or in my community. We've talked about this many, many times, but honestly, it bears repeating. I want you to know it's not that willpower isn't a thing. It is. But this is not just willpower. It's not that you are inconsistent. It's the way you're designed, brilliantly designed, your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. And refamiliarizing ourselves with how that brain tends to work can really lighten up this process for us when we're having a hard time. So in this episode, the first one, we're going to kind of dive into the neuroscience behind your decisions. And we're going to talk about why our brains resist change even when we want change, why intention and habit often feel like they are at war with each other, and how we can start working with our brains with them, not against them. So if you've ever said, I'm too old, it's too late, it's too hard, I should have figured this out by now, I think this episode is here to show you it's not too late. Whether it's your plant-based practice or anything else, there's nothing wrong with you. So let's get started. And the analogy that comes to me all the time about our brains is, do you remember the moment in The Wizard of Oz? And I am aware that that is an extremely old movie, but I do think people still watch it, don't they? Remember when the booming voice and the smoke and the flames of the great and powerful Oz, all that suddenly falls away because Dorothy's little dog Toto has pulled back the curtain to reveal a very ordinary human man pulling all these levers and twisting all these knobs. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, he commands, trying to maintain his illusion even though the curtain's been pulled. And it's kind of how I think we could look at our brains operating when we're struggling. When we're struggling to make a decision, we want to keep that idea, maybe that visual in mind, especially when we're having challenges around something that can be kind of emotionally loaded, like food. Because there's this powerful feeling that our decisions, our actions, that it's all happening to us, that our cravings and our habits and our fears are these sorts of kind of unstoppable forces, a great and powerful internal force. And we feel like we're a little bit out of control and like there's somebody mysteriously, well, like this wizard behind the curtain calling the shots. But if we can lean in with some curiosity about what's going on in our brain, when we can gently pull back that curtain, we discover that it is amazing. It is amazing, but it's not magic and it's not weakness. It's just wiring. And lots of it is very predictable. And most importantly, a lot of it is something we can actually influence. Once you see the machinery behind the curtain in your brain, your choices can stop feeling like some sort of endemic character flaw, and you can start looking for patterns that you can shift, even if it's only one decision at a time. So when you make a choice, what's actually going on? When you make a choice, especially a choice that feels like a bit of a tug of war between your old habits and some new intentions, some new ideas, I think a little bit of a boring but also good synopsis of the regions of the brain can actually help. And no, there's not going to be a quiz. I just want to encourage you to realize that your brains have a lot going on in there. We identify it as just me, one brain, but there's a lot of competing centers. Is that how I would say it? A lot of centers, a lot of different like folk parts of your brain that are competing with each other in any given moment. And we want to appreciate that and also go forward with some curiosity about how we can support our brain to support our choices. So you have the prefrontal cortex, that's your more executive planning section. It wants long-term alignment with your decisions. There are the basal ganglia, which handle these routine habits and they resist change. And you have a striatum, which processes emotion and logic, and it loves a good dopamine hit. And the amygdala, that's your alarm system. And these are all, obviously, all the brain scientists have tuned out. But these are just an idea of how much is going on with different jobs, some of which is redundant among these different parts. But the amygdala, as I say, it's your alarm system. And this is one of those areas which can sort of hijack your attention and your feelings in moments of stress. Then the insular cortex, that's interpreting some of those gut feelings you have. What else have I got? The hippocampus, which connects you with past memories, especially emotionally charged memories. And your dopaminergic system, which is always looking for a hit of a reward and reinforcement. And all these areas work simultaneously in the functioning human brain, sometimes in harmony, but often in conflict. They sometimes in harmony, often in conflict, and they are part of making the decisions that prioritize your safety, your pleasure, your efficiency, and predictability, all of which may very well be at odds, at loggerheads with any new decision or priority or idea, including your plant-based or vegan practice. And these parts of your brain, they tend to work super well when they all get the that adrenaline-fueled memo that there's a predator leaping out at you or there's a loved one trapped under something heavy. But if you're just sitting in your kitchen thinking, you know what? I'd like to change something that I've been doing for 47 years. Sometimes we need to realize that that kind of a chill thought will need to be shepherded through these processes in our brain a little bit more intentionally, a little bit more consciously. And you're saying, okay, that's super great, Michelle, but how does this actually help me? When I'm standing in the kitchen at 6 p.m. with no plan and no energy, and other people are contacting me and somebody wants dinner and somebody wants me to come somewhere. So let's bring this into some concept of real life. All our lives are different. All the things that we find complicated are different. I know that. And while it's empowering to know what your prefrontal cortex or your amygdala are doing, what matters is knowing that you can influence them, that you can use the knowledge you have about those brain centers to make choices that reflect who you want to become not just who you've been. And when it's hard, when it's messy, when it's not working that well, that knowledge can also keep you from falling into the trap of interpreting it all against you or against your character or your discipline. It's not you if you're experiencing some difficulty or lack of progress or erratic progress. That's why I show up here every week, kids. That's why I show up and tell you none of this was natural for me. I was not an early adopter of a vegan lifestyle. I am not known for my iron discipline. I for sure have the focus of I have no focus. Simply as that. And my personal programming was to eat what I'm given and to think that eating animals and dairy and eggs was natural and normal and even necessary. That's who I was. Clean your plate, be polite, don't make a fuss. So, what changes for me, what I do with my clients, what I talk about here on the podcast every week is how to work with the brain you have and not against it. And I think that once you've peeked behind that curtain and you've seen a little bit about how your complex brain is making decisions, you can do things with that information and you don't have to. In fact, typically it's a bad idea to try to change your whole life overnight. That changing your whole life overnight, it's possible when you are being chased by that predator. That predator could be a diagnosis or a health scare or a political situation that has become existential, or a security situation has become existential. When we have massive emotional self-preservation issues behind them, we can make big changes all at once. But most of us who have some level of comfort or security or at least routine that is not currently threatened, probably better not to change your whole life overnight. And you for sure don't need to memorize all those brain parts or download a new system that will help you learn them. But if you take just some of these ideas and try them out this week, I think you might feel a little bit of a shift. And the number one way I encourage everyone to work with their brains as a coach is this idea of narrating what's happening. Narrating in the most boring kind of scientific, like if you're on an archaeological dig, or if you are wearing that lab coat and just looking at some evidence that's shown up in your lab, instead of saying, oh, yeah, why did I eat that? Why did I do that? What happened? Thinking, that's interesting that I chose that. I wonder if that was the reward-seeking part of my brain, just trying to feel a little bit better after a long day. You see, it's not about shame or blame. Shame and blame for sure, is a part of my wiring. I'm looking for who's the responsible party at any given moment in time. But I don't want that when I'm trying to change something. I want understanding. And I want to step outside the story for a minute, for a moment, and realize, I have some awareness of what went on there. You know, my longtime life coach, the ethereal Bev Aaron, would always say, we spend a lot of time trying to talk ourselves out of things we currently believe in and to replace those beliefs with ideas that sound better to us right now. And as she says, when it works, it's amazing. You usually know immediately. Some people, and that's where sometimes we see on the show people who've watched a certain documentary or read a certain book or seen a certain event, they go plant-based or vegan overnight because something changes in those beliefs can be replaced immediately. And when that happens, in that moment when we suddenly notice, oh, what I used to believe, that's not actually a fact. And we get it. It's a choice I've been making. That can be like an earth shattering, blinding light sort of moment. And we can be ready to move on instantly. And those are amazing, amazing moments. But for a lot of us, a lot of things, those changes don't go that way. Because even if we agree something, oh, we go, oh, it's not a fact that eating animals is natural, normal, and necessary. It's not actually a fact. It's something we've kind of been led to believe. But then we go into a cycle of trying to convince ourselves. See, that's not true, but I still kind of think it's true. And that's not true, but I still kind of think it's true. And we try to force ourselves to think, quote unquote, better thoughts. And we kind of put ourselves down or berate ourselves when we fall back into the original thinking that certain kinds of choices are easier or more fun or more socially acceptable. And that can be the spin cycle. And one of the antidotes to that spin cycle is to just slow it down and simply narrate for yourself what's going on out loud. Out loud is good, with a coach, alone in the car, while walking. Also in writing can be very, very powerful. Simply notice the problem. I'm believing this is true, even though I actually know it's just an idea that I'm pretty used to. And then you can go on to narrate whatever is true for you. Maybe that this idea that I would be happier or healthier or more powerful, like if I could just eat anything at all, that has a tight hold on me right now. I would be more relaxed with my trip to Spain if I knew I could just eat anything there, or if every single place we go would have a vegan option. I can start to think, oh, I would be happier in that event. And that feels really true. But is it? Is it? I can narrate the issue to myself. I'm not really sure why, but I seem to want to keep this idea that traveling is too difficult or that I'm too old to make this sort of change at this moment. And I see that impact that it has on me when I am thinking that thought. Maybe it's true, but maybe it's just a thought. As Bev teaches, this is so impactful because when we narrate our inner experience, it takes us right out of the belief. Because while we're believing, there's no wiggle room. But when we can just step outside and tell a little bit of a story, even just to ourselves alone, it takes us out of that identification with what we're currently experiencing. And we get to focus on the experience of what's possible and not just what we have been doing. So anyway, narrating what is really feeling sticky or powerful or true right now. Very important way of, whether you are alone or working with a coach, really powerful way of distancing yourself from this story you're telling yourself about what would be simpler or easier or more fun. And another daily habit, really important to employ when anything is feeling heavier or harder than you think it should, is to just make space for one breath. Right before you make a choice or right when you're making a decision about what that choice means about you, whether you're at the grocery store or at the office or in the kitchen at a restaurant, you can just pause for a second. Is this decision? Is this a decision? Or is this a habit? Is this a decision that's moving me closer to the kind of person that I want to be? And that single breath, that gives your prefrontal cortex a little bit of a moment to step in and help. And remember, your brain does not like making decisions if you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're overstimulated. So don't expect it to be really helpful if you are pooped and hangry. Eat something before you go to a party where you don't feel like there's going to be a lot of support for your plant-based choices. Keep a simple go-to meal on hand or a snack in your purse or in your car. And for goodness sakes, everybody needs to go to bed a little bit earlier. All of you, I see you, you're doom scrolling, you're watching the news. The news after 10 p.m. is not going to change. So put it off till the morning. In fact, put it off till 3 or 4 days. Remember, you're not failing. You're probably just running low on your battery, your energetic battery. And also, there's very important evidence that if you give yourself some language, some emotional vocabulary, I see this with people working with small kids now, helping them to name what they're feeling, whether they're feeling some stress or fatigue or boredom or disappointment. When they're able to name the feeling that they are experiencing, they're more likely to be able to make a conscious choice instead of an impulsive one. And there's a lot of evidence. I will try to put that into the show notes. A lot of evidence that this is a very helpful technique for, especially for young people, but for anybody. When you know that this is a feeling and what that feeling is, you can interrogate whether your choice is actually a rational sort of, whether it's a solution to that feeling. And most of the time, the things that we're doing impulsively are not solutions to the feelings. They are distractions from the feelings. Very understandable, very normal, and also not necessarily going to help us make the changes we want to make. Now, and if you're thinking about going fully vegan and trying to change your family's entire routine, honestly, give it a day or two to settle and make individual choices that you can start to incorporate currently without all sorts of new energy and knowledge and support. I think your future self will generally thank you for building some of the foundation skills and focusing on what you can do right now instead of forcing action, even on yourself, but certainly on other people. We are not trying to become perfect. We are trying to become more aware, more curious, more intentional. And every single time you notice a pattern, you can just pause. You can ask a new question. You can think, you can get some curiosity about what part of my brain is holding on to resistance on this subject. You're building a practice that your future self is going to benefit from, not just in how you eat, not just in terms of your vegan practice, but in every single challenge that you ever want to take on, forever and ever, amen. So the next time, anytime you reach for something that doesn't really align with either your plant-based goals, your ethical ideals, your career plans, your relationship goals, try just pausing. Try not to judge yourself too harshly. Just try to notice what's happening. Is it a habit? Is it a reward loop? Is it a craving that's sparked by some emotion or some stress you're under right now? Is it your prefrontal cortex making a long-term choice? Or is it your amygdala reacting to that moment? And you don't need to be a neuroscientist. You don't need to study for years to change your life. But the more compassionately you can start to appreciate and understand your brain and pull back that curtain, the more clearly you can make decisions that reflect actually your values. And you'll feel more confident meal by meal, day by day. And you don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to keep coming back. Just keep coming back like you come back here every week to Veg Your Best. Keep coming back to the podcast. Keep coming back to your plant-based goals. Keep coming back to your creative ideals. Keep coming back to your relationship goals. And in part 2 of Decide Your Best, we're going to explore some of the emotional and psychological blocks decision making, things like perfectionism, trauma, little t trauma, people pleasing, and the fear of making things harder for others. I hate that one. So you're not alone. You're not behind. You're just learning to decide intentionally, effectively, and to veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.